next guest says that move is a win for Russia and a loss for American allies, jobs, and climate progress. Joining us right now is the president and CEO of the American Petroleum Institute, Mike Sommers. Good morning to you. We spoke to her last week, as you saw, about this issue. A lot of folks in the industry have been critical of this decision and have suggested that this does very little and, in fact, may ultimately make things turn around. Have you had conversations with her about this?
We've had multiple conversations with the administration about this, and we're very concerned about this announcement. As you know, investment goes where it's welcome. And unfortunately, the administration's decision, I think, is going to push investment away from the United States into other countries. This is a decision that's bad for consumers, it's bad for American national security, and it's certainly bad for American allies.
Let me ask you something, which is, and Brian Sullivan said this on Friday, if you just look at how much LNG we've begun to export and produce, frankly, in the United States, it is a remarkable accomplishment. I mean, I think beyond anybody's expectation in terms of how successful we have been at this. And we have done it at a remarkable accelerated speed. I think you'd agree with that. Is there any argument that you could come up with that says, you know what, we should figure out how we're doing this, what's the right strategic approach to this, how we should think about exports, all of that? I mean, is there any part of you that says this has gone so fast, so quickly, that a pause of some sort would be necessary? Or do you believe a study is even necessary?
Well, let's put some numbers on it, Andrew. The fact of the matter is that the United States exported more LNG than it has in the history of time in 2023, and natural gas prices actually went down 63%. So the fact that the administration is putting this in economic terms, when we all know that this was a political decision to appease a part of their political party's base in an election year, that is the real reason why they're doing this. The benefits to American LNG are great. From an environmental perspective, we're exporting American environmental progress to the rest of the world. From a national security perspective, it allows America to present American soft power to the rest of the world, to provide them with the energy that they need during times of need. And finally, it's good for American consumers, because when we have more markets, that means there's lower prices for American consumers as well, because we have more production. So the implications of this, I think, could be far and wide. And unfortunately, I don't think the administration is thinking about them right now.
Can I ask you a somewhat maybe political question? Because I can see two sides of everything you just said. One side, you could say, is actually that this administration, or at least under this administration, to the extent that there's a perception that there has been a difficulty in the energy markets, and that the administration has actually made it harder to produce gas and oil and energy and the sort, has actually been the opposite. Given the numbers you just suggested being at record highs, that's a remarkable thing. You'd think that's a good thing. On the critical side, you'd say now here they are trying to slow it down. How do you look at that, both of those two ideas?
The United States is now producing 13.3 million barrels of oil every single day. That's the highest level we've ever been at. But unfortunately, that's despite Biden administration policies, not because of Biden administration policies. We're going to go through a year, for example, this year in 2024, where we will have zero lease sales in the Gulf of Mexico. We're down in terms of leasing on federal lands by 96%. They've taken over 500,000 acres offline in the state of Alaska at the National Petroleum Refuge. Most of this new development is actually on private lands, not on public lands. And unfortunately, we still get 25% of American production on public lands and in public waters. So this administration continues to try to tap the brakes on American energy production.
So let me just ask you, though, where would we be, though? Let's just say that you're 100% right. Where would we be if you said this is in spite of the administration? Where would we be if the administration went along with your goals? What would the market look like? How different would it be, given that you just said that we're at historical highs in terms of what we've been able to do?
Well, as you know, there is quite a lag in terms of production on federal lands and in federal waters in particular. And in fact, there's some, at least in the Gulf of Mexico, that's been operating since the Reagan administration. But those investments aren't being made today, which means that we're sowing the seeds for an energy crisis in the future, because we're not making those investments here in the United States. And it's not that those investments aren't being made. It's just that they're not being made here. We're going to see continued production throughout the world because world energy demands are going to continue to grow. In fact, IEA suggests that energy demands are going to go up by 50% by 2050 because we're going to have 2 billion more people. And our kids are going to be using a lot more electricity than we use. So we need to get it from the United States, where it's produced safest and in the most environmentally responsible manner. I'm here in Europe today. Europeans who have depended on American LNG over the course of the last few years because of the Russian invasion are scared to death about what the future holds if this administration decision on LNG goes forward.
Mike, final question for you. One of the questions I asked Jennifer Granholm was the idea of can you walk and chew gum at the same time, which is to say, could you conduct this study, if you will, at the same time that you leave some of these things open so you don't take a pause per se, but then at the end of the study, perhaps you do make some decisions, and maybe those would be hard decisions. Would you support that?
Well, we certainly think they can walk and chew gum at the same time. There's almost as much natural gas waiting approval at the Department of Energy as the country of India uses on a yearly basis. That's how much natural gas is being blocked for development at the Department of Energy. So yeah, we would welcome the opportunity to continue studying this with the Department of Energy, but we can't stand in the way of this important permitting process that has to get done in a timely manner if you want these investment decisions to actually be made in the Gulf Coast, in Louisiana and Texas, and in other places that want liquefied natural gas infrastructure built.
We're over time, but let me just ask you one last climate question. Is there any part of you, given what you do for a living, that says, you know what, maybe you'd say it in a perfect world, and the world's not perfect, but in a perfect world, that you'd like to have less fossil fuels out there? You agree with that, or you don't agree with that?
As you know, we're going to need a lot more oil and gas into the future under all climate scenarios. In fact, we expect it to be the source of 50% of the world's energy in 2050, even if every country were to meet its Paris climate goals. So we're going to need more oil and natural gas, not less. And we think it should come from the United States of America, where we produce it in the cleanest way possible, and in a way that is safest in the world as well.
Mike, appreciate your perspective on all this. Thank you. When we come back, Don.